All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're going to be talking about how to build a budget. And I see some familiar names on here. If you've been to some of our other webinars, you know how much I love to budget. So I was very excited to be able to bring this webinar to you. All right. So before we get started, we're going to talk a little bit about just some quick housekeeping items, and then we're going to jump right in because we do have a lot of information. Because there's a lot that actually goes into building a budget, more so than what people initially realize. Okay. So first, we're going to go ahead and just say thank you so much for joining us today on our webinar and our financial education that we offer. My name is Kim. I am a financial wellness coach here at New Hampshire Federal Credit Union, the Centers for Finance and Education. And we love to bring this type of education to our community to help with learning financial basics, things that you might not have learned before, and really help you kind of put the financial stuff kind of together. That way it helps you reach your financial goals. We also offer coaching too, if you need initial assistance after you gather this information. If you actually need help starting to implement it and actually put it into practice, we can definitely help you with that. Okay, and at the end of the presentation, we'll have our information out there so you can reach out to us. I'll also be sending out an email tomorrow. It's a recap email, and we'll get that out, okay? Also, we are doing questions a little bit differently than we have in the past. So what we're going to be doing is we realize that some people don't like to ask questions during the presentation because they don't want to be disruptive, which you never were. But so what we're actually doing is, if you have a question, make sure to use the questions tab. So you'll see the control panel, open that up. There's going to be a questions tab. Click there, type in your question, but it won't be answering any questions during the webinar, okay? The questions will actually come to me via email after the presentation. And the reason why we're doing this is just so if you do have a question, some people just feel more comfortable doing it that way. And then when I do the recap email, what I'm going to have there is I'm going to have a list of the questions and answers. So it's going to be on a nice little sheet for you. So you'll have that. So and everything's anonymous, so we won't attach any names to anything. So, and I'm going to make sure that the questions and answers are available for everyone who registered. Okay, so that's how we're going to do that. So don't forget, if you do have a question, ask away, but I'll do the question and answers in a follow-up email. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So today, how to build a budget, one of my favorite topics. All right, so building a budget. You hear this from us a lot. You probably hear this a lot from the financial community in general. And I always like to talk about the why, the what, the who, when. I like to talk about that because it helps you understand why we recommend doing a budget and why everybody needs to do a budget. Okay, it's not just people who are trying to pay down debt. It's not just people who are trying to build their credit score. It's everyone. My husband and I have been debt free, well, until we just bought our house. Not so debt free anymore. But so our house is our only debt. But even then, when we finally was debt free in 2018, we still lived on a budget, because once you start it, you're going to realize how freeing a budget really is and how much less stress you have, knowing that there's a plan in place. It's amazing. It sounds weird because most people hate the sound of a budget and think it's restrictive, and it's actually the opposite. Okay, so let's start off with what? A budget is a document. Okay, so this keeps track of your income and your expenses for a period of time. The period of time that we usually recommend making your budget for is called a working monthly budget. So it's per month. The reason why we recommend doing the monthly budget is rather than a year budget or a weekly budget is because typically your bills are in monthly periods. Typically, most bills, subscriptions, utilities, things like that, they're all in a monthly cycle. So we usually like to do it in the period of time being monthly. Okay. Who? Everybody. I don't care how much debt you have, how little debt you have. Everyone should budget. Okay. When do we create the monthly budget? So this is something that's going to be dependent on you and your situation. In our household, what I do is I usually use the last weekend of the month to go ahead and create the upcoming month's budget. Okay, so let's say we're in May, the last weekend in May, I usually do it on a Sunday and get it all taken care of, have hubby look at it, make sure there's nothing I missed or anything he needs added to it. We finalize it, and then it's ready to rock and roll for June. Okay, that's how we do it. Where? This actually doesn't really matter where, but it's where you feel most relaxed, because when you're first starting this process, it can be a little stressful because you're changing the way you're doing your money. Okay, so it's going to be stressful. So you're going to want to find a place that's relaxing. The first couple of months that I did ours, I did it in the evening with some big glasses of wine. You know, that's the way I had to do it. And they always will tell you usually the first, second, and third month of budgeting is going to be the worst. Usually first is the worst. Second is a little bit better. Third is a little bit better. And then once you get past that third month, then you really got it down pat. So you're usually are going in a good direction and you understand it better and it starts to flow better. Okay. Why do we need a budget? A lot of people tell me, well, I have a budget, but it doesn't work. I'm like, okay, so what's included in your budget? They're like my monthly bills. Bills, okay. What about your expenses? No, those are my bills. Like, so you account for food and gas? No. Like, well, those are expenses. Those need to be added too, so you actually get an accurate vision of what you're spending each month. Because if you just have the bills down, then that's not an accurate representation of everything you're spending in a month. Okay. So when we do a budget, this will help us understand all of our spending, where it's going, and understanding where we may need to make cuts if we want to reach our goal a little bit faster. Having this all down on a sheet of paper is going to be amazing because you don't have to look at 5 different things or bank statements every month or things like that. It's just you'll have everything there. Okay. And so now, okay, once we got all that information, how do we budget? There's so many budgeting forms. Which one's going to be right for me? How do I do it? How do I start? That's what we're going to go over today. Okay. Okay. So what does a budget mean to you? I actually asked a bunch of my friends on Facebook to see kind of what was going on in their minds when I said the word budget, because as a financial wellness coach and working as a financial wellness coach, it's one of those things where people really don't like the word budget. So in that case, what we talk about is sometimes we'll change the wording to savings plan or spending plan or something like that. It sounds a little bit easier to people. But when I asked my friends, this is what they said. They said, oh, well, when I see a budget, it just means how many bills I have taken out. It means that it's a tight week. Disposable income, financial plan, how much money I must work with, overwhelming, smart. So the one that was probably the highest one was tight week, because what people associated budget with they associated budget with after going through the month and paying regular bills and expenses, they only started to budget their money when it came to the end of the month, when they started running out of money. So to them, that's what budget means. So when I said budget your money, they're like, oh God, you know, because they're so used to only budgeting when they don't have anything. And that's where that negative feeling came from when I talk about budget. That's why they felt so negative about it, is because that's how they associate a budget, that they're using it when they have no money. Oh, and if you're wondering what I'm drinking, it's a Thai iced tea. Everyone, when they see the orange drink, they're like, what in the world? But I love Thai iced tea. It is like the most delicious stuff. All right, let's get back on track. All right, what kind of budget do we use? So this is the budget that we use is a zero-based budget, okay? Where we have your income, we have your expenses. At the end, we want there to be a zero, which means every dollar is accounted for. Now you might say, what? I don't want to spend all my money. I want to save. That's one of my goals, is to save. With the zero-based budget, it includes bills, it includes expenses, and it includes savings, okay? The reason we want to account for everything is because 80% of personal finance is behavioral and psychological, okay? And so the reason for the zero-based budget, and the reason why I like it so much, is because it does help you if you're trying to curb spending habits. Ava, how would that help? Great question. How it helps is if you know, so let me say I made my budget for June, okay? And I know that I accounted for every single dollar to go someplace. And then, okay, in my head, I know every dollar is accounted for. We don't have any like just throwaway money, right? We have money we're putting in savings for stuff, but we don't have throwaway money. That's fine. And so if I'm going to Target to get baby stuff, I know how much money I have in my baby savings that what I can afford. But then if I want to go and I see a bunch of clothes that I want to get or something else for the house, but I didn't budget for that, I know that if I spend that money on that house stuff that I didn't budget for, that it has to come from a different category. And so when I go shopping and I use this zero-based budget, it's very helpful to know that I have a zero-based budget, because when I go there and I'm going to get baby stuff, I tend to just go right to the baby stuff, get the baby stuff, and I'm out of there, okay? And so that's what the zero-based budget is supposed to help with. It's supposed to help with the psychological part of the finance, okay? And we'll go over that and how I find it extremely beneficial. And what we also do, so the zero-based budget, we were able to create the zero-based budget, but also with the allocation. So that's where you allocate your income to specific bills, we have that all on one sheet, which can be helpful for people. It's the sheet that I really enjoy using. And so, you know, when I send out a recap email, we'll have those handouts in there for you as well. So the biggest part of setting a budget is actually setting a goal. What's the purpose? What are you looking for financially? So when we started our budgeting, we kind of had all three in mind. For instance, we wanted to pay off debt because we wanted to be home buyers, and we knew there was no way we were going to be able to purchase a home with the amount of debt that we had. We had $90,000 in debt. So our goal was to become a home buyer and to be able to actually put money, save money to purchase a home. We had to get rid of a lot of our debt because a lot of the debt was soaking up a lot of that income that we could be saving. So that's how we kind of was setting these goals. That's how we kind of were able to organize what we were to attack first. Okay. So setting goals. Second, we have to identify income and expenses. So the first month of doing this, you're going to want to rip your hair out. I don't like to sugarcoat things. So I'm very honest. It's a pain in the rear. Okay. Because you're learning a different behavior with your money, something that you probably haven't done before. And it's just a lot. And you only have to really do this for the first month. Okay. So we're really getting organized. Gather your information for your zero-based budget. So income information, look at your pay stubs. What are you getting? Does your income fluctuate? Does it not fluctuate? Are you salaried? Do you get the same amount? Or do you get paid weekly? Do you get paid bi-weekly? All that information you're going to need, right? Now you also need your home bills, rent or mortgage, car payments, utilities, those type of things. Then you need expenses. Okay, so that includes food, which, you know, groceries. Also, if you plan on eating out at any time, you need to make sure that kind of see what you've been doing in the past so you can make an educated example for going forward. Usually a lot of people that go through this process say, I should have so much more money at the end of the month, and I don't. And when they actually go through this and they look at their past statements and they identify how many times they went out to eat, it's a staggering number. I had one family that was spending over $1,000 a month going out to eat, and they're like, well, we know where the money's going. And they were also buying a good amount of groceries. And therefore, I asked them, I'm like, so when you eat out and you bought all these groceries, are you throwing a lot of stuff out? She goes, yes, we throw a lot of food away. So I'm like, so you're really just throwing a lot of money away? And she goes, yeah. So that's something to look at. Medical bills, everything that you have, right? Credit cards, any type of loans, education. Do you have, I know some professions, you need to do continuing education. Is that something that you have on a regular basis? Are you actually going to school? Do you have to pay for classes? Savings. So we call them sinking funds. Sometimes you call them expense savings. So all those type of titles are kind of all for the same thing. Sub-accounts. These include savings accounts for us. For instance, like we have Christmas. You know, we consider that an expense savings because we save up for the year, and then that way, when it comes to closer to Christmas, we already have the cash ready to buy stuff. Okay. We also have one for vehicle maintenance. We know we're going to have tire changes. We know we're going to have oil changes. We know we're going to have maintenance. So we built our budget to have, we put a regular monthly amount in a savings account named vehicle maintenance. And that can build up, and then we use it when we go get an oil change. We just transfer that money right into the checking, and we use our debit card. Okay, so we talk about those. those are primarily in step 2. We kind of hold off on the savings part for the moment, and we're just looking at income, bills, and expenses, okay? Because we want to see what your cash flow looks like, how much money you have coming in versus how much money you have going out. And this is the area where you want to be honest with yourself, okay? A lot of people try and just kind of say, well, I don't need to do, I think I do this much. We don't think, we look at it. We look at the statements. You need an accurate picture of where you are starting, right? Because if you kind of cheat and just say, well, I think it's this, then you're just cheating yourself, because building your budget isn't going to affect me in any way. It only affects you. So if you're working off of wrong numbers, that can really hurt you, okay? So you always want to understand where you are at the time that you're starting this. Managing seasonal expenses. So this was something that took us a full year to complete. So the way that we safeguarded ourselves is in the budget, we knew we didn't have any seasonal items that was more than $300, okay? So the way we took care of that is we always made a category for the first year, possible seasonal expense, okay? And it was $300. And then what we did was, if we didn't have anything come out, then what we would do is we would allocate that. We had a little plan of where we were to allocate that, okay? And that's how we safeguarded, because we're like, oh, and we ended up building we call it our annual bills. Since then, I kind of changed it up a little bit. So what I actually did before is we had every month, January, February, March, April, May, June, we had the bills that were coming out. So as the first year we did this, as it came out, like all of a sudden, like AAA, we're like, ooh, that one came out, and that comes out this month for this amount of money. And so what we did was, once we got through all of that and we created that, I then said, okay, because some months are worse than others, right? Especially with your birthday. And if you have any vehicles, our 2 vehicles are registered under me. So yeah, so happy birthday to me. I get to go register and inspect 2 vehicles. So we realized that some months were really expensive versus some months that weren't. So what I actually did was I added up all our yearly expenses for the year and then divided by 12. And then it came out to a nicer number per month. So we actually have a savings account that says yearly expenses. And for a whole year, I was putting that amount in and then let that build up. So now as we go through each month, we still put away that same amount each month for yearly expenses. But if something comes up, like my birthday month comes up and we have the 2 cars, I can just transfer that lump of sum from that yearly savings into my checking, because I know we're covered. And it's so much easier than trying to figure out how to register 2 vehicles in my birth month, especially because it's like close to, it's a little bit after Christmas. So it's within a 3-4 months period, it's like a huge whammy. Okay. So that may be something that works for you. And it works a little bit different for everyone. So that's why with personal finances, it's really what works for you, but still be in an organized fashion. Okay. Separating needs from wants. So when you first look at your statements, you're going to see a lot of things that you might not like, money going places you don't want it to go, but it went. And you know what? That's fine. We can't change it. Can't change it. But going forward, we can. So separating needs from wants is going to be golden. especially if you have certain goals that you were looking to meet. And I have cars on here because we actually had a great example of this. Our goal was to be debt free because we wanted to buy a house, we wanted to start a family, and we didn't want the debt there, okay? So midway through our budgeting and paying off debt, I needed a new vehicle. I had a previous vehicle that was an SUV, Premier, black, chrome, bells and whistles galore. Now, at the point that we were looking for a vehicle, we already had our credit cards paid off, personal loans paid off, vehicle loans paid off. We were working on our student loans at the time. We had about $9,000 saved for a vehicle. And so my husband and I talked about it, and we said, you know what, we don't want to finance a vehicle because we're paying off debt. We don't want to add more debt to it. We're paying it off. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's look at what I need for a vehicle. I travel a lot. You know, I worked an hour away from home, so I needed something that probably had lower mileage because I knew I was going to be racking up a bunch. Something with good mileage because I'm driving a lot. And something that is going to have cheaper maintenance, because if I'm driving a lot, that means I'm going to have more frequent maintenance on the vehicle, right? I'm racking up the miles faster. Therefore, I have the regular miles maintenance I have to do because I drive so much. More frequent oil changes because I drive so much. More frequent tire purchases. Okay. So that's where I said, okay, I want something small, something that's low mileage, something that's newer, and that costs no more than $9,000, including paperwork. And it took us a while, but this was my little, I actually still have it. As of right now, and it's been wonderful. I've had this vehicle for over 10 years now, and it's been fantastic. And so it's one of those things where, yes, I would love a moonroof, sunroof, all the bells, whistles, but that's not what I needed. What I needed was to get something that helped me reach my financial goals. Without the plan that we had, if I went to a dealership, I could have easily got talked into something that was bigger, that was better, that cost more, but it would have been more expensive all the way around, right? Payments, I would have payments. Insurance would have been higher. Maintenance would have been higher. Gas would have been higher. And so that's where really separating needs from your wants, that's kind of like the example I go to, because it's really putting what you're looking for ahead of today. Like, yes, if I got another Premier vehicle, would I be happy today? Sure. Would I have been happy in a month? I don't know. All of a sudden seeing that we have payments and seeing that we went backwards, and I'd probably be kicking myself. Okay, so we want to look for the long run. Is the decision you're making today going to help you reach your financial goal? And again, that's why it's so important to set that financial goal first and foremost, okay? Designing your budget. So as we talked about, everybody's financial situation and journey is unique. And so we really design the budget depending on what you're looking for, okay? Some people want to be debt free. So we focus on, okay, let's hone in on becoming debt free and really working at paying off these debts. Other people just want to get organized. They're like, yeah, I have debt, but I don't care about it. I just want to get organized so I'm not getting late fees and stuff. Or they're looking for other products. You're looking to buy a home. You're looking to travel more. I want to save to travel more. So we design, and you design your budget based on you, okay? And that's where That's why we don't tell, and even though we use the same budget for everyone, we will never tell you not to buy this, not to buy that. We'll be like, well, does that help you reach your goal? Because that's what you really need to ask yourself. Is what I'm putting on this budget going to help me reach my goal or not? Okay. So this is an example of the zero-based budget. The one we're going to look at today is a little bit different. It has all of this, so it has the categories. I will also have this one. This will be sent out with the email. And what it has is planned and actual. So this is the one that we usually use when you're first starting, okay? Because it's just, we're changing how you're doing your monthly bills or looking at it or referencing it. And therefore, we wanted to make it kind of easier. And when you plan something, especially if you never planned your grocery shopping, and you're like, I usually spend like 300 here, 200 there. Those are the categories where it's like, okay, let's see, you usually spend this much. Let's see if we can get away with this much. And then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, what did you actually use that month? And we're gonna see if what you budgeted was accurate or if what you budgeted was too much or too little. And then we'll revamp it for the next month, okay? This is just another budget. You can get this at consumer.gov. There's a ton of different budgets, different layouts out there. And so definitely use something that's going to be work best for you, but you want to make sure that it has everything that you need. Okay. And if it doesn't, you want to make sure that it has fillable areas where you can put things to add that you might do specifically. Okay. And the way you find this out is I don't want you to just look at this and fill it out. You want to go by your statements. Okay. Where do you spend your money and then put that on here. Okay. This is a calendar. Some people like this instead of the allocated spending plan. So I have, when we go through the budget together, I'm going to show you what the allocated spending plan looks like briefly. Sometimes this is what's extremely beneficial for people, and it's a calendar. So usually what it will do is if you look, I usually have people will use different colors. So when you get paid would be green, right? Because you have income coming in. If you have expenses, whatever those expenses are, you put those down wherever they go. Obviously, this does not have everything on there because I didn't want it to look too aggressive to the eye. But I wanted to make sure that it was on here so you can kind of see. So this helps people sometimes if it's more of an organizational issue that they need help with, because sometimes I just help someone where all their bills, every single one was coming out the first 2 weeks. So their paychecks, the first 2 weeks of the month was supposed to cover everything. And they were getting tons of fees because everything was coming out in the first 2 weeks. And so what we did was we made a plan to call their creditors, other banks, and see if we could move, like for instance, like their car loans, push something out to the next week. So they'd actually have, because they had plenty of money for everything, it's just everything was coming out the first 2 weeks. And so, yeah, and so they were getting charged hundreds of late fees every month for something that shouldn't have been happening. Okay. This is what we're going to be looking at. This is what I use. So you have the zero-based budget. So you have your monthly total. So you have your income over here. You have, and then you have the monthly expenses. and what you owe. And then over here is your weekly spending plan or your allocation, right? So we have our paychecks, when our paychecks are coming in, and what bills are allocated to which paycheck. So this is usually the issue with most people seeing this and then all of a sudden freezing. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to go ahead and look at a budget together, okay? So this is the sheet that I use, okay? Up here, you wanna put the month. So since I've been talking about June a lot, we'll just put June up here. And then whatever year it is, okay? And then your expected income. So I'm just gonna use round numbers because it's just gonna be much easier for just looking. Okay, so let's say your household makes $4,000 a month. Now you're going to see I made this spreadsheet. I like using spreadsheets. So we have here expected income, then we have total expenses, difference, we want it to equal 0. Remember the zero-based budget. And so we have our monthly, oh yeah, another thing is I froze the top so you can always see as you scroll down, okay? So what we're gonna be doing is we're going to be starting, remember how I said we're gonna be starting with bills and expenses first. So we're going to go down and we're going to look, and let's say we have 1,200 rent, electricity is 120, water, we have to pay for water. Again, this is very individualized, so this doesn't mean that you pay for water or you have to pay for heating gas. It's just on here. Cable internet, because we only have internet, so it's 85. Mobile phones, 160. Groceries, so we'll do 600. We don't have any pets for this exercise. 200 on gas. Let's do 60 at hair, because we go every 4 weeks. Pocket fund money. This is a category that I think everybody should have. And this is something where each pay period, you should have a set of money in cash that you can spend however you want. You budget it as fund money, and you don't have to have a specific purpose for it other than having fun with it, okay? Clothing, I put 50 on here. I am not a shopper, so I don't do a lot of clothes shopping. So on our budget, I don't even have clothes on here. And whenever we need some, then I budget for the following month. Okay, we'll go shopping and we'll spend whatever. We'll plan for like 150 on clothing or whatnot. All right, so let's see. We rent, so let's do $12 for rental insurance, auto insurance, 200, because that's been going up. Let's say we have Netflix, and let's say we have the Disney bundles, which is 20. Let's say we have a gym membership that we never use, but it's on there just in case we want to go. And then we have restaurants and social. Usually the first few months, I say don't put anything in these categories, just to kind of make it easier that for your bills and expenses to be paid and see how it goes there, and then just hold off on those guys. Okay, we're gonna do 500 for car number 1. We're gonna do 300 for car number 2. Right now, the average car payment in the US is $550, which I find absolutely disgusting. Here we have 3 credit cards. I have these so you can actually update these guys if you like. Visa, let's say this is Amazon, let's say this is Target. So I have it so you guys can actually change this up. So even with the cars, if you want to say this is for the truck, let's see, this is for the CRV. You can do that too. Okay, so I made sure that these, and wherever you see other, you can change those. I wanted to make it as interactive as it needs to be. So you can see after putting those stuff in, I have $12 left over. So with that, I can go back up here and say, well, you know, I have $12. Let's put it in to an emergency fund. I figured that's a savings account for emergencies. I don't have any need for that $12. If you wanted to, you could put it someplace else. You could put it in a restaurant and maybe go to a pizza place, like when they're having a special, and use it there. Well, you can do whatever you like. Okay, so that is where we have the monthly bills, expenses, and we had some left over, so we put it in savings. So our difference is now 0. Okay, that's exactly what we wanted. Now over here, this is the interesting one that can kind of, this is the part that really makes you pull your hair out when you're first starting. I've been doing this now for 10 years and it's like, it's second nature to me. So this is where we go ahead and put in 2000. I have to fix this cell, but if you look at this cell, this is what I have is your paychecks, what week you're getting paid, and then we need to allocate the funds. So let's say that we have rent comes out on the 1st. Let's say electricity comes out on the 1st, and then for argument's sake, I want to show you, say water comes out on the 3rd, and same with the heating gas. You're going to see how this number goes down. The reason why I did this is so as you're planning and you're going down, you can see what you have left in that pay period. This, I think I accidentally backspace and got rid of it, so we'll fix that. Cable internet, phone comes out at the end. Groceries, this is the one where you're going to want to split it up, okay? Because you don't get paid on the 2nd, you probably won't go and do 2 weeks worth of groceries. So this is a category that I actually will recommend you having an envelope system for, and taking $300 out of the bank and putting it in an envelope. And then when you go to the grocery store, that works out to $150 a week, and you have that in cash, okay? The reason why I like to do this for groceries, and we also do it for our gas, is because not every week is the same when it comes to groceries. It's not like any other bill. One week you might spend 120, next week you might spend 180. But then that works out to 300, right? And instead of trying to figure that out, if you use your debit card and looking at your statements, if you just have a cash envelope that you keep a little register, okay, put $300 in, spend 120 at Market Basket, have 180 left, and then you went to Market Basket the next week and spend 180. You have track there, so you don't actually have to try and figure it out, and you don't have to keep receipts. You don't have to do all that crazy stuff that a lot of people say you have to do. You don't need to when you use the envelope system, which is fantastic. Okay, so let's go down here. Gas is another one that you're going to have to split up. So we budgeted it as if you were spending $50 a week on gas, okay? Hair, we'll go ahead and do, well, that's expensive hair. Do that. Add pocket money is the same thing. You want to go ahead and split this up, right? Because you want to, so for you, it'd be $40 a week for pocket money that you can go and do whatever you want. 50. Auto insurance. We're going to have the big car payment come out of this guy too. All right, so then we have renter's insurance usually comes out at the beginning. Netflix, we'll do that at the, and again, this all depends on when your bills come out. This is another way of telling if you have too much coming out of one, okay? Because if all of a sudden you realize that all your bills are coming out of here and now you're at a negative, that's another thing like the calendar will definitely help you with. Okay. All right, let's say both vehicles come out of here. Okay. And then you're going to notice, so gym membership, we'll do gym membership here. And then all these guys, 35, 50, 100. Those will all come out of the first paycheck. Okay, and the only thing we have left, I think we have everything else accounted for, except for the emergency fund. So this, because it's going into savings, I tell people it doesn't need to be one big clump. So you can put 3 here, 9 here, and so you know by the time you get your second pay period that $12 will be able to move. Or you can move $3 and then move 9, whatever works for you. But you can see here that there's 0. You can see here that we accounted every dollar, and it shows you where every dollar is going and what pay period it's going for. And so when it comes out, for instance, once rent comes out, I usually like to print mine because I like to do it on the computer, and then I like to print it. But then I check it off. Boom, boom, done. That one's done. Electricity, when that goes through, that's done. And the great thing about this is because I budget like this, and I know that I have the funds there, and it's going to be taken out, I have most of our bills set up for electronic payments, okay? Because I know the money's there. I know it's there. I'm not guessing, I'm not stressing. I'm not saying, oh God, I hope it's there. From my budget, I know it's there because I wrote it down. I know what money I have coming in. I know what money's going out, okay? So this is where that budget comes in. And I said it was freeing because you don't have that worry. You don't have, because there's so many people that come in that they're like, yeah, I thought I had an extra $300 and so I spent like 200 and then realized that this bill didn't come out. You don't have any of that anymore because you have this. In this, actually, when I print this budget out, it actually comes out in 2 sheets. That's it. I have my entire month of income and finances, where it's allocated, all on 2 sheets of paper. And if you do double-sided, it is 1 sheet of paper. Okay. So that's something, and I mean, I made it look easy because, you know, I don't want to have it be too uncomfortable to look at. I just want you to know that ultimately, once you get there, the first 3 months again are going to be the roughest for you. But then once you get there, you don't have to keep recreating the wheel. So with the Excel spreadsheets, what I do is I just, when I go to make next month's, so say, you know, I just made June's, and now June is over and I'm making July. All I do for June's is I go into June, make a copy, label it July, everything pops up, and then so I still have everything filled out. I just change the date at the top, and I go ahead and update anything I need to update. You don't need to recreate one every month. That's another thing people think they have to do. Okay, so yeah, and if you have any questions about that process or need any help with that process, let me know. Okay, so step number 7 that we look at is looking ahead. You want to monitor, you want to review, and you want to reevaluate your budget and spending plan every month. Just like I said, you know, copy June's for July, but then go through and update anything you need to update. But you want to make sure that you're creating a monthly budget for every month, because every month is very similar, but there are going to be some differences, okay? Holidays, birthdays, things like that, okay? Now, if you go through the budget and you find that you actually have a deficit, instead we had a $12 surplus, then what we want to do is, okay, we want to, first you have to be financially aware. Okay, I'm spending more than I'm making. I didn't realize that. Oopsie daisy. Cash, again, cash envelopes are great for gas, for groceries, for that fun money. And it's a lot harder to overspend with your cash because that's all you got, right? Whereas it's a lot easier to overspend if you're using debit card or a credit card, okay? Lower non-essential spending. So we talked about the wants and the needs. So non-essentials are the wants, right? We go through there, we realize, ooh, we're spending way too much on restaurants. And did you see, we didn't even put anything in restaurants. We wanted to see how things go, okay? And then you might decide that you want to lower some stuff, right? Shop around for less expensive cell phones, internet, TV plans, all of that. Definitely shop around. Shop around for insurances. So some people think that if they're loyal to one company for years and years and years, that they're getting the best rate possible. Not always true. Oh, and if you need any assistance with that, we do have some insurance people that I absolutely love that we do work with. So you can definitely reach out and we can help you with that. But we definitely recommend a representative that looks across the board at multiple different companies, not just one specific company, okay? You want to make sure they're getting the best rate for you as they can. Okay, so that's one way that we can lower expenses. Also, does it make sense to move? Right now, probably not. You know, depending on what the housing market looks like, if rent is sky high everywhere, you might not be able to move right now. But that doesn't mean that you might not be able to move in with family, right? If it's a good situation, then do it. I say if it really hurts your mental health to move in with family, because sometimes that is the case, don't do it, okay? Can you refinance high interest debt? So on our budget, we had multiple credit cards. Would it be worthwhile to look into consolidating that, getting it into a lower interest rate, possibly, which will bring down the monthly minimum payment? That's something to look at, okay? When you do groceries, can you start looking at generic versus store brand items? That will help lower your grocery bill. And yeah, and just make sure that you're also not, when you look through that first time when you're looking through your statements, make sure you're not getting charged for anything that you're not using. I made a joke about the gym. If you're not using the gym, get rid of it, okay? General tricks on how to, spend less money. Pretend you have less money. That's always a good thing to do. Treat each purchase as if you were spending the last of your money. Again, we're playing psychological games with ourselves. Always have a list and set a limit when you go shopping, right? Stick to it. Do not use big shopping carts if you're not doing a big thing, even if you're not, depending on how many people you have in your household. We usually say go once a week when you do your shopping, depending on how big your household is. You might be able to get away with a small shopping cart, okay? And think of the mentality of your food plates. Whenever you have a big plate, you always want to fill it, right? You just want to fill it. Whereas if you have a smaller plate, you still want to fill that, but it's a lot less food. It's the same with the shopping cart. You, like, some psychological reason, like, you want to fill it. So if you take a smaller cart, you're more apt to stay within your budget, but also buy less unnecessary items, okay? And sometimes we're able to decrease our expenditures, but also sometimes you might have to increase your income. It might actually be an income problem and not a spending problem. So this is either get a part-time job or start looking for a better full-time job, something that will pay more money, probably help with, if you have any student loans, help with student loans, things like that, okay? Also, is the place that you're living, could you have a roommate, right? That might be an option. Something to help increase income. Is there anything that you're good at? Do you do hobbies? Maybe sell on eBay, sell on Etsy, that type of stuff. Do you have a bunch of stuff in a storage unit that you're really don't even care about, but you're paying for the storage unit? Maybe having a huge yard sale, okay? And then you get rid of that storage unit cost. Next, we have savings. So this is really after we look at bills, expenses, and we're able to cut down what we're doing as far as expenses. Because it's really good to save something, but at the same time, for us, we saved for the emergency fund. That was our first step. We wanted to make sure we had money in the emergency fund. But then we really attacked it because with all our minimum payments that we had, we couldn't save anything. That was the issue. We couldn't save anything. And so we didn't even look at savings at first. Every last penny that we had extra that wasn't going to bills and expenses after our emergency fund was saved for, we threw it at debt. We were just chucking everything in. And then once we freed up a few of those payments each month, then we started to slowly implement certain savings accounts and what we were doing. And we talked it over which ones would be the most important. You know, vehicle maintenance was the first one because we know that's always coming. And so, and then as we went through the years, we created more savings accounts, and things like that. Okay. But these are some savings advice. Once you're able to get to that point, if you're at that point, use direct deposit. That's extremely helpful. Some people will send their money to a different financial institution than they have their bills because they want to make it harder to spend. They don't want to be able to just transfer that to the checking account and spend it, okay? So it really is depending. I do love sub accounts. I have 14 of them, which are those expense savings I was talking to you about. Emergency fund, car registration, vacation, summer camp. You could, whatever works for you, whatever you need it for, that's what you do. Okay, and when you're ready to save, the one you're most likely going to be doing is the savings and checking. Okay, because that's the one, especially the emergency fund, you want that in a very liquid account, right? You want it, the reason why we say liquid is because it's like what you want to be able to make it sure that it flows freely. So if you need it, you have access to it right away. You can get to it. If it's tied up in a CD, you might not have access to it right away, okay? If it's tied up in a retirement account, you definitely will not have access to it. So you're primarily going to be working with savings and checking, okay? And then once things get paid down and you're able to look at other accounts, these are the some of the other savings accounts that are available. And I also talked, just going to briefly go over the debt snowball because I know we're getting close here. This is the method that I love because it is, you start with the lowest balanced debt. So this is what we used when our goal was to become debt free and to pay off debts. And so we have the company names and we had the balances here, lowest to highest. And you know how we just did the budget, we had $12 extra. If we were doing the debt snowball, that $12 would go toward this first debt. So instead of being $25, our minimum payment would be $37. For this exercise, we made it nice and easy. So we had an extra $25. So we worked on this first debt. The minimum payment turned into $50. So once we had that and we were able to pay off that balance, you put a line through it. On a side note, I always recommend to have this on a piece of paper on your financial board, so you can cross it off with a big red marker, okay? But then once you do, the reason why it's called the debt snowball is that payment rolls down, but then you can see it really beefs it up. So that little snowball that started up here, as it goes down to each debt, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, okay? So we pay off that Amex. That $50 minimum payment now gets rolled down and added to the Capital One payment. So instead of $30, it's now $80. So we're able to throw $80 at Capital One. And then once that $1,000 bill is done, we take that $80, roll it down into Best Buy, which is a minimum of $80. And now we're able to pay $160. And you can see how that little snowball is starting to grow. And by the time you get down to the big bills, like, you're able to chuck a bunch of money at it. And it gets really exciting. So that's the debt snowball. That is the one I absolutely love. And if being debt-free and paying off debt is something that you're looking for, then that's the method that I usually go with. There's another method called the avalanche method. But I don't think, when we're talking a lot with the psychology of things, I don't think that's as beneficial depending on where you are with your finances. So it's definitely something to consider with your finances, because everyone's, again, financial journey is a little bit different, but I love the debt snowball. All right, and so that concludes our presentation of how to build a budget. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead, type them in now, and what will happen is I will get an email and we'll answer all those in the recap email that gets sent out. Okay, and here's our information. So I'm going to go over that a little bit. That way, if anyone has questions, they're able to type them in. If you want to contact us today, there's myself and then my team member, Megan. Our information is right below our pictures. You can also contact us through our group email, which is centerfb@nhfcu.org, or you can call our extension, which is also our group extension for the center, 603-224-7731, extension 330. All right, thank you so much again for joining me. I look forward to answering all your questions, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye now.